The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. The race for Conservative Party of BC leader is on. British Columbia stands at a crossroads, says Yuri Fulmer, who was the first to put his name forward for the job. After years of mismanagement and policies that have failed working families, it's time for a new direction, states his leadership campaign website. Fulmer was born in Australia and moved to BC after a backpacking trip. He says, "I fell in love with the gentle and equitable ethos of Canada." He stayed and went to work at an A&W. By the time he was 22, he bought his first A&W franchise and started to build a business portfolio that included Mr. Mike's Steakhouse and Bar, as well as a number of other companies. Fulmer's company byline is business nicely done, and it is clear his political lens is business-focused. His political chops are a little thinner. He ran in the last provincial election in West Vancouver, Sea to Sky, where he lost to the Green Party candidate. A learning experience to be sure, says Fulmer. I invited Yuri Fulmer to join me for a conversation that matters about his bid to lead the Conservative Party of BC and then lead that party into the next provincial election. Mr. Fulmer, welcome.
Nice to be here, Stu. Thanks for having me.
Last night, I was at a panel, and Port Coquitlam Mayor Brad West was on that panel, and I asked him, what would you like to know from Yuri Fulmer in his bid to be the leader of the Progressive, or the Conservative Party of British Columbia? And he said, well, maybe you could ask him to articulate what he sees as his path to being able to unite that party first, and then what then would be the path to lead it into a provincial election.
I'm glad he didn't start with Yuri who, so that's a progress already. Stu, I don't think the party is divided in the way the NDP is trying to claim it is. I've met with almost every MLA in our party more than once, and these are good, hardworking, thoughtful folks who had the courage to put their name on a ballot, the courage to leave their families and their jobs to do the best they could to help the people of British Columbia. And I think they've got great ideas. And I think what happened in some instances is they got to Victoria, it was a very new caucus, right? Very few people had any provincial political experience. And they were left to their own devices. And when that happens in business, when that happens in your family, people make a few mistakes. And I think there were a few mistakes made along the way, and they were all well-intentioned, but a few mistakes got made. I don't think we had a unified message or a unifying message. And I think what ended up happening is folks talked on issues that were important to them, and there's nothing wrong with that. But then the province lost the sense of what we stand for as a party. And so I think in unifying the party going forward, we need to have tough conversations in the caucus room, and if we have to throw coffee mugs at each other, we have to throw coffee mugs at each other. But we've got to come out with a message that resonates with British Columbians and solutions to problems that matter to British Columbians. We've got to find those 4 or 5 things we can actually action and provide a solution. And we've got to stop talking about everything else. Mm-hmm. And that I think we can do. I think we can unify behind the fact that British Columbians need better healthcare. I can't find a British Columbian who tells me that the healthcare system is serving them every day. I can't find a British Columbian who tells me, my life is super affordable in BC. I can't find a British Columbian who thinks that public safety is the best it's ever been, or who feels safe on the streets all the time or in their home. These are issues we can unify behind. And I don't think it's a big bridge to cross. I think we're ready to do it as a party. We've matured over the last 15 months since the election. I think the general public is sick of the NDP, and they're looking to us to be the government in waiting. And I think we're ready to do that. So I think there's a bit of work to be done, but I don't think it's a huge bridge to cross.
You, of course, allude to the fact that there, in many ways, was leadership, I don't want to say vacuum, but Mr. Rustad, nice guy, really nice guy. I've had him on this show. The challenge, though, is how do you take the need to be able to lead a group of people who have diverse opinions, and they don't technically work for you. They rally around you and choose to put their their vote in behind you. What is your message to them to say, I'm that leader that you need to get behind, or I want you to get behind, so that we can deliver that message to the people of British Columbia?
Yeah, I've had a diverse number of experiences in my life that I want to bring to this role, both as leader and as premier ultimately. And running government or running a party is not the same as running a business. But there are elements that are the same, right? When you come to the counter at an A&W and you want to give me your money for lunch, I have to deliver you value, right? And that doesn't mean I have to deliver you the cheapest product or the best, but I have to deliver you value. You have to say to me, I've given you my $12 and I feel satisfied that I got $12 worth of product in return. I think we've got to offer the same thing to the province. We've got to say, you send tax dollars to Victoria, and in return, you feel like you've got a fair deal from your government. So you've got services that matter to you. You feel safe in your community. You feel like you've got opportunity in the province. So we've got a fair deal with each other. So I think that resonates and that connects from business. I think the other thing we do in business is we bring together diverse groups, right? And any good leader will tell you that they have a management team that doesn't think like they do. Because if you just surround yourself with people who think like you do, you get very singular in the way you see the world. And that's not good for a business, and it's not good for the province. So I think you go into it welcoming the diversity. And I think that's what we learn in business, is you welcome diverse ideas, you welcome diverse thinking. And in constructing the map forward, you have to consult a wide group of opinion. But then we have to unify to find the solution and the forward path. And in business, we did that all day long, right? Everybody at the end of the day says, I didn't get everything I want in the vision for the future or the budget or in whatever we're going. I didn't get everything I want, but I can sure line up behind that. And so I think, my business experience does bring that. I think it also, my business experience tells me that, revenue has got to at least equal expenses. We'll leave that for another conversation.
Well, we'll get to that.
We will. Thank you.
Yeah.
But I've also spent my life as a community volunteer. I am honored to chair the board of United Way globally. It's a $6.5 billion charity in 34 countries. And its purpose is to lift communities and to enable communities to lift themselves up. And you can appreciate across 34 countries, there are a lot of different ways of thinking about how to raise community up. And we pull that together and we enable communities of all shapes, sizes, in the US, from Republican communities to Democrat communities, from communities that live in poverty to communities that are affluent. And we bring those ideas together in order to raise community, because that's more important than any of our own ideas. The important thing is the outcome, not the ego that puts the idea forward. So I think I bring together those sort of diverse experiences, both on the business side, but as a community volunteer and a community leader, that would benefit our province and that would contribute to our party's success. So I sit here at 51 years old. I've lived a life that I'm privileged to have been able to lead. This province has been really good to me. And I really want to uplift this province and bring together what is half a lifetime of experiences to do that.
I like your analogy on the ROI on spending $12 at A&W, that am I going to get what I paid for? The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. Coming back to the question of you leading not just a group of MLAs, but also party members. You want them to say, okay, I want to put my vote to you as leader. What is your message that says, this is what my leadership will stand for? So that they can say, okay, that's the return on investment that I want to get for my vote.
Yeah, and I've been out on the road. So I announced 2 weeks ago today, I announced that my candidacy for leadership, and I got on a plane 24 hours later, headed to Cranbrook, then from Cranbrook, worked my way down from Campbell River through the island to Victoria, came back with just enough time to change my underwear, went to Fort St. John, and we've just come back from Penticton and Kelowna. So I really have been spending time with Conservative Party members in the communities they live and work in. And what they tell me, Stu, first and foremost is we need to win elections, right? We can shout at the wind in opposition, and that is in service of nothing that we want to achieve and contribute. So they know we have to win elections. Right? That first and foremost, we have to have ideas and have solutions that resonate with British Columbians. And I think we understand that if every Conservative Party member needs everything that they think to be in the Conservative Party agenda, we'll end up appealing to nobody. Right? It will be such an exhaustive list of issues. And this isn't unique to the Conservative Party. I'm sure the NDP has the same challenges internally. But we've got a diverse group of folks. And because of the size of the province, we've got a diverse number of issues, right? The issues in the Lower Mainland are not the same as the issues in the Kootenays, not the same as the issues on the island or the north. So we have to balance that with everybody coming into this saying the biggest goal is to win government so we can make the changes we know we need to make. So we need to coalesce behind a number of issues that resonate with British Columbians. And we're all going to get something less than everything we want. And you can say that's a compromise. I would say it's the coming together of great ideas and finding the best and brightest ideas and how we move forward behind those. And I think the Conservative Party members are more than ready to do that. So whilst issues do differ in different parts of the province and the ideologies are broad, I think we can use that to our advantage to come up with the best ideas going forward.
So the way I hear you position that is that you say, look, I have a broad enough approach to be able to accommodate a variety of views, but I'm going to focus it down and be that face that the rest of British Columbia can say, okay, I understand what you stand for. So let's turn to what are some of the major topics in British Columbia. I want to start with the economy. I think our economy, I'm going to state it right up front, is in trouble. The facts are there. We have put up a sign that says you might want to reconsider doing business in British Columbia.
Yeah, so I think I think you're being a bit generous. I think it's worse than that.
Well, I have to walk a line here.
Fair enough. I think what we've done is, if our province is a store, we've taken that sign on the door that said open, we've turned it to closed, we've pulled down the blinds, we've closed the metal shutters across the front, and we've let the leaves and the dust and the debris build up in front of our store as a constant reminder that there's nothing to do here. Like, don't come here, don't even look this way, don't get out of your car and walk towards our door, just keep driving right on by. If we look at the provincial budget, nobody would run their house the way David Eby has run the province's budget. We have an $82 billion budget and we're looking at an $11.6+ billion deficit.
For this year.
For this year. And there's no plan for that to be any better, by the way. It's 10 billion plus deficits as far as the eye can see. And then we spend capital on top of that. So the analogy I would give you is if your household makes $82,000 a year, equivalent to the province's $82 billion, and you spend $93,600 a year, and on top of that, you renovate your bathroom for $20,000 this year. That's essentially what the province did. And then they're planning next year that they're going to do the same. No, not planning for any great revenue growth, but we're planning to run the same deficit. We're also going to renovate the kitchen next year. Same the year after, and we're going to renovate the garage. As a householder, if you do that, at some point the bank's going to come and take your house away from you, and they're going to tow your car out of the driveway and take it away. Well, kind of the same thing happens to the province, right? And if you're going to manage that deficit, at first you might be able to put on your line of credit at low interest rates. But after a while, your line of credit's maxed. And then you go to credit cards. And now you're maxing your credit cards at higher interest rates. Guess what the government does? When they've got low debt and low deficit, they borrow at low interest rates. High debt, high deficit, borrow at high interest rates. And so now we've got this place where every British Columbian's portion of the interest, just the interest on the province's debt, is closing in on $1,400. It'll be $2,500 in 2 years. So for the average British Columbian family of 3.1 people, that's $8,000 in interest only. We haven't paid down the debt, just the interest on servicing the debt, $8,000 that they're going to send to the government in hard-earned tax dollars so the government can pay the interest on the debt. How can we be in a world where that $8,000 goes back into taxpayers' pockets to help them with their affordability? We've got a government that says, we know you have an affordability problem. Please send us more tax dollars so we'll create programs to help you with affordability. I think taxpayers just want their money back, and they'll tackle affordability themselves.
So there's two ways to address that. One is cut spending, and the other is to help increase tax revenue through increased economic activity. How do you intend to do those two things?
So I think we need to freeze spending, right? We need to reassess what we spend money on and how we do it. And so I don't think it's necessarily about drastic spending cuts. I think we do spend some money that we don't need to spend. You know, you mentioned my campaign in 2024. I knocked on the door in Squamish. A young man answered it, maybe late 20s. And I went into my spiel of, I'm Yuri Fulmer, I'm the Conservative candidate here. And he says, don't worry, he says, I'm voting for you. I said, oh, great, well, thank you very much. And I said, can I ask what you do for a living? And he said, I work for the provincial government. And I said, wow, I said, working for the provincial government and voting Conservative are not always in the same sentence. And he laughed and he said, I said, I'm going to tell you what I do. And he said, I appreciate that in telling you this, I make myself look bad, but I'm going to tell you anyway. He said, I got hired during COVID to work fully remotely, answering the COVID hotline. So he said emails, text messages, phone calls would come in, and he said there'd be thousands of them at the beginning of the day, and at the end of the day, there was still thousands. But we were all worked hard from home trying to process this. I said, well, thank you for your service, right? Like, we all needed information during COVID. Thank you for doing that. He said, no, that's not my story. He said, so eventually it went from thousands a day to hundreds a day to tens a day. And then he said the day came where there were no inbounds into the COVID hotline. And he said that was 2 years ago. And he said, I still work for the provincial government. I went out and got myself another full-time, fully remote job. And I leave the government's computer open on my desk. And if anybody ever messages it, I'll happily respond. But he said, I've been drawing a salary for 2 years and I've done zero work. And I said, wow. And he said, I can't be alone. He said, I can't be the only person in this situation. And he said, I'd happily do work. Like, I would happily do something to help, like British Columbians. He said, I loved this job because I felt like I was making a difference every day. And he said, I want to do something, but there's nothing for me to do. And I thought, okay, here's the challenge, right? We've got willing, able public servants who want to make a contribution. And we as government are getting in the way of their ability to make that contribution. So I don't think it's not about cutting, it's about redeploying. Mm-hmm. And so how do we take the spending that we've got in the community and make sure it's deployed in the best way possible so that taxpayers get that value we talked about? So that's priority one.
That's on the cutting back on spending side. How do we now...
But now we get to the fun part, right? The really exciting part. And any person in business will tell you don't cut your way to prosperity, right? You can't cut and expect the province to become prosperous. Same way you can't do that in business. We have these amazing economic drivers in the province that we have repeatedly stomped on as hard and as furiously as we can for now 9 years of NDP leadership, right? We've got a premier who's actually embarrassed. Like, I believe he's fundamentally embarrassed by the resource sector. And every time somebody brings up forestry or mining or fishing or anything in the resource world, he looks at his feet and is embarrassed to say he's the premier of a province that's resource dependent. And so he's happy to talk about anything else. And there are other great sectors in our economy. I was in Kelowna with the aerospace sector, a billion-dollar industry. They're there as well. But the drivers in our province are going to be forestry and mining. And we need to get them going. We need to get them going now. And if I have to, as premier, stand in the doorway of the premier's office with a pad of paper and sign and approve permits in the door of the premier's office, that is what I will do to get this province going again. Like, spending time in the Kootenays, spending time in the north. I'm surrounded by good, hardworking British Columbians who just want to work, right? They want to work on these projects. They want to get them going. These communities, some of them have been decimated when mills close, right? There's no other jobs in these communities when mills close. We've got to get this going, and we've got to do it now.
So in that is the unbelievably complex set of regulations and rules that have been added on. You talked to David Williams at the Business Council of BC. He said, we've kept just piling in one rule, one piece of legislation, one regulation after another, to the point where sort of the cogs of industry just grind to a halt. And that's what gets in the way. That's why forestry companies go, this doesn't work. You've cut back on my supply of timber, and you also make the business of being in business so cumbersome that it doesn't add up. How do you get in there and clean out? Because it's going to be painstaking work to clean out that mess that's clogging things up.
Yeah, so the good news is we created all of this so we can fix it, right? Like if it was imposed on us from somewhere else, that's more challenging. But as government, we created this absolute nonsense, right? We've got the forestry sector telling me, we need 31 permits to do something. By the time we've got permit 31, permits 1 to 6 have expired, and we need to start the process all over again. So that's absolutely ridiculous. Like how we let this continue in the province when we've got hardworking women and men who want to get back to work and get the economy going, and we're telling them that their government is in the way of them working. We've got to get past this. The other thing is we've got to start from a position of yes, not from a position of no. So let's say yes to activating the forestry sector, and then let's say, what do we have to do to get it going? Right now we're in a place of no, where we say, we really don't want the forestry sector to get going because the Premier's embarrassed about it. And so how do we create as many obstacles as possible in society so that they can't do it? Let's get to yes, right? It's about yes. And so it's pipeline, yes. It's forestry, yes. It's mining, yes. Let's get to yes so that British Columbians can be prosperous together. We look at Norway that has less resources than British Columbia, fits into British Columbia multiple times, and they've got a $2 trillion sovereign fund. The people of Norway have $2 trillion that supports the social services they need, that gives them good healthcare, good education. And we know Norway is, everybody holds Norway up as this is how we should all live. Well, they do it based on the $2 trillion sovereign fund that is resource dependent, right? It's based on resources. In British Columbia, with more resources, we have a $140 billion debt. How's that working for us? They managed to, harvest 2 to 3 times the number of trees as British Columbia. They only lost 130 acres of forest to forest fire. So they've managed to manage this amazing resource. We've managed to squander this amazing resource at the expense of British Columbians. Under a Fulmer government, we don't do things at the expense of British Columbians. It's British Columbians first, British Columbians foremost, every single day, and let's get to yes on the things that will actually make them prosperous.
The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. Hanging over all of this is a tremendous amount of uncertainty about reconciliation, land claims, DRIPA. What is your plan to address this as a significant obstacle to attracting anybody to go, okay, Premier Fulmer, you went and did all those things, but I still don't know what my legal rights are, and how do I move forward, especially under the guise of DRIPA, which is anything I want to do, well, which First Nation do I have to consult with, get their cooperation, and how does that fit in with the UN Declaration on Indigenous People, which is an aspiration, but it's not a legal document. So how do we create certainty in that without trampling on the rights of Indigenous people that we all recognize are legitimate?
Reconciliation is important to British Columbians. It's important to me, and it's important to British Columbians. Reconciliation, first and foremost to me, is about uplifting communities. So it means uplifting Indigenous communities, it means uplifting non-Indigenous communities, and doing it together. We need to do that. It needs to be a massive focus for our government, should be a focus for any government. It's not about virtue signaling. It's about good, honest, financial reconciliation so that we prosper together and that British Columbians succeed together. I'm hearing everywhere in BC, people are afraid that the home that they worked their backsides off to buy, they worry is under threat. And I had a lady push back at me at a meeting the other day, and she said, Yuri, you're fear-mongering with this. She said, there's only a 5% chance that I don't own the house that I think I own. And I looked at her and I said, 5%? You're good with 5%? I said, the only percent I'm good with is 0. Yeah. I'm good with 0. British Columbians deserve absolute certainty that they have title to their home.
Well, that's what Fee Simple is about.
That's what it should be about. So DRIPA needs to be repealed. I suspect David Eby does. He'll amend 999 words out of 1,000 so that he can say he amended it. It
Rather
really
than
should be
repeal
repealed.
it. Yeah.
It really should be repealed. It was, to your point, it was never designed to be a regulatory or a legislative construct. It was a document created by the United Nations that was designed to sort of set a philosophical context. And we decided to enshrine it in legislation, and then all sorts of unintended consequences happened. So I think we're in a place now where British Columbians are saying, this ain't working for us as British Columbians. It's created uncertainty. Frankly, it's created divisiveness between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. I worry it sets reconciliation back decades. And I don't think this is this is what anybody intended. This is unintended consequences, but we can fix it, and we have to fix it. Mm-hmm. If we just continue to watch it, it will get worse and worse. It'll pit Indigenous people against non-Indigenous people in a way we haven't seen in a long time. And I find that scary. That is not progress. Like, that's putting us back in the past.
So that's DRIPA, but we also have the Cowichan decision right now that is in limbo, and just being in limbo creates an air of uncertainty. Would you have responded quicker to the courts than we've seen so far from the province of British Columbia?
Absolutely. This issue really requires leadership, right? It requires people to say things that are sometimes a bit uncomfortable, and say things that are in the best interests of all British Columbians. And I think we're ready to have that conversation, Stu. I think we weren't a while ago. But I think these recent decisions, and I thank the Mayor and Council in Richmond for highlighting the consequences of this recent decision, because I think it brought this issue into a very personal light for every homeowner. And 2/3 of British Columbians own their own home. And I think 1/3 probably aspire to own their own home if they could afford it one day. So this affects every British Columbian, and owning a home is part of the Canadian promise, right? Part of the British Columbian promise. So this has made it truly personal. So we need to respond on behalf of British Columbians. Private property rights need to be enshrined in legislation, and we need to move on from this issue so that we can actually focus on meaningful reconciliation.
If that were all, I'd say thank you very much, but there's still more. We have an ongoing opioid drug crisis in British Columbia. How do we address that? We
have a terrible drug crisis in British Columbia, and like this one I hold at the Premier's feet, right? Like in everything that happens in government, there's a global perspective on it, right? Like nothing happens in a vacuum. This is an issue that we can 100% put at David Eby's feet, right? There are no detox beds. There are no rehab beds. And I know they put out numbers that say there are, but when you talk to British Columbians who are looking to get into detox or looking to get into rehab, the process is mind-numbing. I spent time in Port Alberni with a mother who had 2 sons, both addicted to fentanyl. And the story she told me was that if you want to get into publicly funded detox, because detox is, you can do it privately, but it's wildly expensive, out of the reach of most folks, that you have to phone at 8:55 every morning to look for a detox bed. And she said for her and her husband, that was fine. They put the phone in her son's hand at 8:55 in the morning to say, it's time to phone, get on the phone. But if you're living on the streets, finding a phone and finding 8:55 in the morning, probably pretty challenging, especially if you're addicted to fentanyl. And she said, you phone every day, and it can be weeks before they say, yes, there's a detox bed. And she said, when they tell you there's a detox bed, it's not today. It's 11 days from today or 12 days from today. And she said, that was fine for my husband and I, because we wrote that in the calendar and we grabbed my son on day 12 and we took him to detox. But she said, if you're living on the street and addicted to fentanyl, time is a bit of an artificial construct. And 12 days from now might as well be an eternity. And she said, the worst, Stu, is that when my son came out of detox, there was no rehab bed. So we went back on fentanyl. And that happened again. And then that happened again. And then it happened again. Like, that is not a caring society. Like, as a British Columbian, somebody who's addicted to drugs and wants to get off deserves our kindness, our compassion, and our unequivocal support the day they want to do it.
Have you taken a look at the Alberta model? Dr. Julian Summers at SFU says that Alberta may actually be leading the world in their approach to addressing this issue. Have you had a chance to look at that model?
You know, I haven't in depth, but I know there's a lot of British Columbians who really want to focus on this and make this very different for people. Like we can't let this continue to happen. And I think some folks have a notion of drugs and addiction that, with respect to them, may be dated, right? Fentanyl 2026 is not pot 1976. Like, nobody got into being addicted to fentanyl voluntarily. Like, nobody said, I want to spend the rest of my life addicted to fentanyl on the streets. So we've got an opioid crisis, the magnitude of which is nothing like we've seen in the past. And we need to deal with this from a kindness and compassionate perspective. Like, these folks need our help. Addiction is the only disease where we say to you, sorry, not today, for treatment. Like, if you present with heart disease at the hospital, we don't say, you know, you need to phone us back at 8:55 tomorrow morning and we'll let you know if we're able to treat you one of these days.
Well, they might be doing that.
Well, so you show up to the ER, you might get that answer.
Involuntary care, what's your position on that?
I think we have to. You know, this is back to, again, fentanyl 2026 is not weed 1976. There's a level of addiction where folks have lost the ability to manage their own affairs. And I think we must intervene in those people's best interests. For us to be well, we're not going to do anything, and that's somehow kind, and we're going to continue to walk by somebody suffering on the street, living on the streets, addicted to fentanyl, and we say, letting them make the choice to do that is the kind thing to do. I think that's absolute bloody nonsense.
The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. Even though open use and safe drug supply now have been demonstrated to not work and the province is backing away, we have a crime on the streets problem in many areas around British Columbia. We look at the downtown east side in Vancouver, but it's not unique just to there. You can see the same thing playing itself out in Nanaimo, Victoria, Prince George, Kamloops. What do we need to do to return some level of safety and security for the average person who's on the streets in those communities?
You're right. You know, this used to be a downtown east side big city problem, right? And the rest of the province was able to kind of shrug and say, well, I'm okay here, you know, not my problem. And that's radically shifted, right? Radically shifted. You know, and I've been traveling through small communities in rural BC, you know, and hearing from people in small towns. Like, we're talking, don't want to name them, but towns of 10, 20,000 people, and they're telling me there are streets in those towns that they won't walk down. So we're at a really strange place in our province where, I mean, I'm a 6'2", 200-pound guy. I don't get afraid that easily. You know, you mentioned I backpacked around the world. I did that on my own at 17. I didn't feel unsafe anywhere in the world. I now feel unsafe on streets of, you know, Vancouver, Kelowna, Victoria. There are places I won't go, right? As a 6'2", 200-pound man. We've got to change our perspective on this. You know, we're one of only 3 provinces where the police can't lay criminal charges. So we talk about a revolving door. It is literally a revolving door. You know, if you're arrested today for a crime, you'll be taken in and released until Crown Counsel presses charges. And this isn't a statement about the hardworking women and men in the Crown Counsel office. This is about where those charges should be laid and by whom. Because it can take days, it can take weeks. And we heard from somebody in the RCMP that they often rearrest the same person on the same shift. Like, not the next day, the next week, on the same shift, they'll arrest somebody for a repeat offense of the same type of crime on the same shift. What are we thinking? Like, how is this a good idea? Like, in what world is this a good idea? And why don't we trust our police? Right? We have well-educated, thoughtful, caring members of police forces throughout British Columbia who are more than capable of making the decision about pressing criminal charges. But we've, yet again, with government overreach, not allowed them the authority to do that. So step one is we need to make sure that people who are being arrested for repeat offenses, violent offenses, are actually put in jail. Right? Actually put in jail. Like this revolving door system, this, constant back out on bail, back out on the streets, ability to reoffend, ability to flee the jurisdiction. It's got us what we've got. So continuing to do what we do will continue to get us what we've got. We've got to hit reverse on this. We've got to take a position as British Columbians that it is our right to be safe on our own streets. We've got to demand of government. This isn't something that you may want to deal with or should think about. You owe us part of that fair value deal. I pay taxes and I expect you to keep me safe as a result. That's got to be the argument.
So, unfortunately, a lot of the people who are afflicted with addiction to fentanyl are in situations where they're constantly in trouble as far as their own well-being is concerned, and emergency services have to arrive to attend to them. It's overloading emergency services, but by extension, it's also contributing to the challenge that we have in healthcare. How do we address the delivery of healthcare in British Columbia, and not focus just on what is the consequence of people who are in an addiction crisis, but for everybody, because you go to Merritt and the ER may not be open. Even in Vancouver, there are ERs that aren't there, or you can't get the service, or there's incredibly long lineups. You can't get a family doctor. Can we address this? And what's your position on saying we need to recognize that we do not have a single-tier healthcare plan in British Columbia? So let's be honest about that and start to work towards saying there's got to be other ways that we can deliver healthcare in this province.
I think all of us in British Columbia have been kind of boiled frogs on this issue. Our healthcare system has got progressively worse, but slowly. If we went from healthcare in the early 90s, late 80s, to healthcare today in a year, people would be marching in the streets, right? Absolutely marching in the streets and demanding their government do better. But it's been this slow deterioration. It's been the growth of bureaucracy in healthcare. It's been the failure to put enough people on the front line. So we've been boiled frogs, and now we kind of think that it's okay that an emergency room's closed. Oh, the maternity ward in Fort St. John is closed, and women have to go to a different province to have their children. They have to go to a community hours away to have children. Well, that's okay. So 1 in 5 British Columbians doesn't have a family doctor. Most of them women and children. That's okay. Like, if they're really sick, we'll go to the emergency room. Like, when did this become acceptable to us? Somebody gave me a statistic that in Fraser Health, for every frontline worker, there is, 1.9 frontline workers, there is a supervisor or manager.
It's almost 1 to 1, not quite, but
that is insanity. Why aren't we investing in the front line of healthcare delivery? Why do we assume that nurses need levels and layers of management above them? Why do we assume doctors need to be overmanaged? Why do we need 77 vice presidents in the BC healthcare system when Alberta seems to make it work with 6 or 7? When did we decide that this was okay? When I was on the campaign trail, I talked to a woman who was a nurse manager. And I said, well, tell me the life of working in healthcare as a nurse manager. And I said, what does your day involve? And she said, I start my day in the parking lot. I said, well, like that. What? She said, I start my day in the parking lot, Yuri, because I have to talk nurses out of their cars to come into the building to work, because the conditions are so awful. We are so overworked. We have no resources to do the jobs we need. We're constantly pressured to do overtime, and we're willing to try and help people, but we've got families and lives as well. It is so awful that nurses sit in their cars deciding whether or not they'll come in for their shift today. And she said, if I don't spend that first hour in the parking lot talking them out of their cars, we're not going to have enough nurses working today. These are people who signed up to be in the caring professions, right? They're good, hardworking British Columbians who want to take care of other British Columbians. How have we not given them the resources they need to do that? How have we made their job of caring so awful that they have second thoughts about walking into the building to do it? We have let people down. And again, if this had all happened in a year, there would be a riot on the streets. But we're boiled frogs.
Well, this is a massive pursuit that you've taken on to say, I want to be the leader of the party and then ultimately run in the province. I applaud you for stepping forward. It's a significant amount of one's life, and to be able to say, I'm going to put my name forward in service to others. I thank you for doing that, and I wish you success in your campaign. And we'll be looking forward to seeing how it unfolds.
Thank you, Stu. I honestly feel called to do this. I had to look my children in the eye, and my kids are 4 and 6. They don't really understand this, but they saw Dad's signs, and they know the blue signs are Dad's.
Yeah.
But I had to look them in the eye and say, Dad's got to go and help people. Is that okay? And my son now says to me, Dad, are you going to work today, or Dad, are you going to go and help people? And that's why I know I'm doing the right thing.
Thank you.